JD Vance just sat down for his first interview since becoming vice president, and it was a particularly brutal experience, with Vance being humiliated both by the host and himself with his terrible, stupid, awkward answers to questions about why the Trump administration broke its promise to immediately cut costs for the American consumer, why it's now okay to pardon violent January 6 criminals, even though he previously said it would be a disastrous idea, and why he seemingly no longer has any interest whatsoever in breaking up big tech monopolies now that they're backing him and Donald Trump. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, and I want to give the devil his due. I don't like JD Vance. I think he's a coward. I think he's a loser. I think he's wildly unprincipled, but he is very smart. And as awkward as he can be, and was notoriously during the campaign very unlikable, he was the least popular of the four candidates. Tim Walz was the most popular, then Kamala Harris in terms of approval, then Donald Trump, and then JD Vance. Setting all that aside, he's usually pretty good in an interview because he's very smart. He's very agile. But sometimes the facts are such and the hypocrisies are such that no matter how smart you are, you just come off really poorly in an interview because the facts are just insurmountable. So we're going to play these clips, starting with this one here about a major broken promise by the Trump administration.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise.
So I just want to stop right there. This is important. Okay. So again, great question by Margaret Brennan. Hey, you guys talk a big game about how awesome it was, all these executive orders. You said that you would cut prices immediately. Which executive order did you sign cuts costs? And he says, well, okay, well, listen, we're experiencing job growth. Okay, this is where we're going to unpack this together. When President Biden was in office, there was job growth literally every single month he was president. At no point, at no month under the Biden administration was there a job loss, was there a net reduction in jobs. It's an extraordinary record. As a matter of fact, even if you control for COVID, the rate of job growth under President Biden exceeded Donald Trump's pre-COVID job growth. Biden was just better at it. Fact. Okay. As a matter of fact, when President Biden was still in office towards the end, this was just like 2 weeks ago, JD Vance sat down for an interview on Fox, and the Fox host confronted him with the last jobs report of President Biden, another bombshell which exceeded expectations. And this was JD Vance's answer.
You talk about what he's left on the border. He wants to talk about what he's left you on the economy. There was a robust report out of December on jobs. Unemployment down to 4.1%. President Biden says his policy decisions are finally paying off. Here's a bit of more he said on Friday.
Sure.
After decades of trickle-down economics that primarily benefited those at the very top, Kamala and I and our administration have written a new playbook that's growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up that benefits everyone. The new playbook is working.
Okay, so the December numbers were good. What kind of credit do you give him?
Well, look, first of all, I wish Joe Biden all the best, but the fact is he has left us dumpster fire, not just at the border, but also with the economy. First of all, we know that prices are way too high for many Americans. We have to work every single day to stabilize prices for American families.
So you see what happened there? Again, when Joe Biden's in office, a really good jobs report, which exceeded expectations. Well, that doesn't mean shit. Prices are still too high. It doesn't matter. More jobs means absolutely nothing to JD Vance because prices are so high, as long as it's a Democrat that's in power. But when he and Donald Trump are in power, then more jobs is suddenly a good thing. And the only difference is, besides that now the Republican's in charge versus a Democrat, is 2 weeks. Again, I want you to hear this hypocrisy in real time.
All of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise.
So again, more jobs under a Republican somehow lowers costs, but more jobs under a Democrat doesn't mean shit. The hypocrisy and cowardice of this loser is once again on full display. But we'll continue.
Wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years. It's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity. We're going to work with Congress.
So again, you see the stammering. Well, it's gonna take time, and he's done more in 4 days than Biden did in 4 years. Can't describe those specific accomplishments, which matter more than the Chips and Science Act, which is presiding over a manufacturing boom, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices to lower prescription drug prices. 225 to 250,000 jobs, I think, created on average per month. Again. None of that matters. Lowering veterans' health care costs, expanding veterans' health care, none of it matters to Elon or to J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, because Donald Trump signed some executive orders in 4 days. And again, what's so funny is, costs will come down. Well, they're going to take some time. Interesting. Well, this is what your boss, Donald Trump, had to say about cutting costs.
Starting on day one of my new administration, we will end inflation and we will make America affordable again because the prices are too high.
So Donald Trump promised that on day one, he's just so damn good, right? He's a god. He's a deal maker. He can just snap his fingers and end inflation. Well, inflation is actually rising on your watch. As we discussed in a previous video, the price of groceries, particularly eggs, and gas prices are on the rise, and you're president and vice president now, and you said you would be able to end it all, not just stabilize things, but reduce costs in 1 day. You failed spectacularly, and now you're moving the goalposts. It's going to take time. So then you lied to your supporters. You lied right to their faces. And again, the standard changes. Well, how we're cutting costs by making more jobs. But that didn't matter 2 weeks ago. The hypocrisy and dishonesty is staggering, and that's why you see J.D. Vance in real time. Well, we're going to liaise, we're going to work with Congress. Total bullshit from a bullshit artist. So now we're going to turn to a different topic, which is Vance being grilled about Donald Trump's pardoning of violent cop beaters and insurrectionists.
Has used an electroshock weapon against a policeman who was dragged out of the defensive line by plunging it into the officer's neck. He was imprisoned, sentenced to 12 years, 7 months. He got a pardon. Ronald Maccabee hit a cop while wearing reinforced brass knuckle gloves, and he held one down on the ground as other rioters assailed the officer for over 20 seconds, causing a concussion. If you stand with law enforcement, how can you call these people unjustly imprisoned?
Margaret, there's an important issue here. There's what the people actually did on January the 6th, and we're not saying that everybody did everything perfectly.
What? At least 600 January 6th criminals were charged with attacking the police, so engaging in violence. 172 pled guilty to assaulting the police. 70 of them pled guilty to assaulting police with a deadly weapon. And you're describing their behavior, Mr. I back the blue, Mr. We're the party of law enforcement, as, they didn't do everything perfectly. The hypocrisy and cowardice and shamelessness on full display, where he is desperate to downplay the severity of what they did. Because again, I want to be very clear. It is a fact. This is not a matter of opinion. It is a fact. The Republican Party doesn't give a damn about law enforcement unless law enforcement is doing things which benefit them. So when you have a situation where their supporters are attacking the U.S. Capitol to try to install Donald Trump into a second term, unelected, to overthrow the federal government, the peaceful transfer of power, free and fair election, and law enforcement prevents them from doing that, then they hate law enforcement. Hate them. It is a purely transactional and cynical relationship. Don't let anybody tell you anything else. But we'll continue.
There's what the people actually did on January the 6th, and we're not saying that everybody did everything perfectly. And then what did Merrick Garland's Department of Justice do in unjustly prosecuting well over 1,000 Americans in a way that was politically motivated?
Is violence like that against a police officer ever justified?
Violence against a police officer is not justified, but that doesn't mean that you should have Merrick Garland's weaponized Department of Justice expose you to incredibly unfair process.
You guys use an electroshock.
So again, they can never articulate what the unfair process is. They can't do it. They just cast vague illusions. It was unfair. It was politicized. Let's again take them at face value, which, by the way, we don't have to do. We are not obligated under any way, shape, or form to, justify their claim. Okay, but let's take it at face value. Well, then why didn't Donald Trump just pardon the nonviolent offenders? You could have done that. You could pardon one. You could pardon all. You could pardon every other one. You can pardon on a case-by-case basis. The pardon power is pretty damn sweeping. Why didn't you exercise judgment, you dishonest, unprincipled moron? It's because, again, they don't give a damn about the police. At the end of the day, they value their supporters. And if their supporters happen to be police or aligned with the police, great. If not, fuck the police as far as elected Republicans are concerned. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. One other clip here.
Google, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. In August, you told us Google and Facebook are too big. We ought to take the Teddy Roosevelt approach. Break them up. Don't let them control what people are allowed to say. They've now donated to the Trump inauguration. Are you still going to break up big tech?
So, who else was at the inauguration was my mom and a lot of people who just supported the president.
What a dumb response from somebody so smart. And this is what I mean. It's not the JD. This doesn't make JD Vance dumb. JD Vance isn't dumb. I'm sorry, he's just not. It just means, unfortunately, in life, the facts are aligned against you in such a way that your only response is a dumb one.
To say they've now donated to the Trump inauguration. Are you still going to break up big tech?
So, who else was at the inauguration was my mom and a lot of people who just supported the president and fought every single day to get his election. And
they
to make
gave
it,
$1 million
and to make it possible
each to the inauguration.
And there were a lot of people who didn't give $1 million to the inauguration.
They got pretty good seating.
Who were on that stage, Margaret. They didn't have as good a seating as my mom and a lot of other people who were there to support us. But look, we believe fundamentally that big tech does have too much power, and there are two ways they can go about this. They can either respect Americans' constitutional rights, they can stop engaging in censorship, and if they don't, you can be absolutely sure that Donald Trump's leadership is not going to look too kindly on them.
So they're still on notice.
They're very much on notice.
Google.
So again, you see the stammering, the stuttering there for a couple of reasons. Again, the facts are aligned against him. I don't envy JD Vance here. I also don't have much sympathy for him because he helped create the situation. So fuck him, number one. But number two, this is not a good hand to play. Number one, why should we care at all what JD Vance has to say? Because Donald Trump has repeatedly contradicted Vance multiple times. I mean, again, look at the violent January 6th pardons. JD Vance said on Fox News that obviously you shouldn't be pardoned if you commit violence. And Trump said, you don't matter. I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm not entirely sure that JD Vance ultimately will have much influence over this administration, number one. Number two, your mother is not a big tech oligarch, not a big tech interest that you have previously suggested should be constrained by the government. So your mother being there proves nothing, nor does it disprove anything. Not sure why you would bring that up other than to distract. Number three, notice how he reframes the issue. It's not that big tech has too much power. It's really what they do with the power. You see how he moved the goalpost? Margaret Brennan said, listen, before you said that they had too much power. It's not just that you disagreed what they did with it. It's just inherently there was too much monopolization of the industry by these big tech interests. That was your criticism. That was your populist criticism. And fair enough. Now you've moved the goalpost and said, actually, it's cool if Google and others, monopolize the industry so long as what they do with that power benefits us. Ending censorship. What that means is ending fact-checking. JD Vance won't give a damn if Facebook or X silence, suppress, or censor left-wing accounts. It's all about the transactional element. You can continue to maintain your monopoly, grow your monopoly so long as you use that influence in a way that the Trump administration favors. And again, the hypocrisy is so staggering that even J.D. Vance, who is a very gifted speaker, who is a very quick, agile interviewee, someone who's very smart, struggled to answer the question visibly. You just watched him die inside because he can't answer the question competently, because the question is so transparently against him. The facts are aligned against him. And this guy hasn't even been in office for a week. What an indictment of a corrupt, dishonest, hypocritical, unconcerned administration. They broke their promises about cutting prices for the American people. They broke their promise with respect to, or at least Vance did, about pardons and the interest in preserving rule of law and backing police officers. And they seem to be walking back any interest in reining in big tech interests. So disastrous interview all the way around. But I guess kudos to J.D. Vance for being willing to humiliate himself and be humiliated by Margaret Brennan, because it was wildly entertaining. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.